The Zalathi merchant vessel, Silent Current, drifted through the outer rim of the Helix Nebula, its sleek hull reflecting the purple and blue gases that swirled around them like cosmic smoke. Captain Vexara stood at the command deck, her 4 eyes scanning the navigation charts with practiced efficiency. Her species, the Zalathi, had evolved on a peaceful water world where the greatest predator was no larger than what humans might call a house cat. They had never needed to develop the aggressive instincts that plagued other species. "Captain, we're approaching the transit corridor," announced Navigator Kree, his tentacles dancing across the holographic controls. "Should we proceed through the standard shipping lanes?" Vexara's mandibles clicked nervously. The standard lanes would save them 3 cycles of travel time. But they skirted dangerously close to human space. Every species in the Galactic Alliance knew to avoid the Deathworlders when possible. Humans came from a planet so hostile that most civilized species couldn't survive there for more than a few hours without extensive life support. High gravity, toxic levels of oxygen, predators that could kill with teeth and claws, weather systems that could level cities, and worst of all, the humans themselves had evolved to thrive in it. "Plot a course around human space," Vexara ordered. "Add 4 cycles to our journey if necessary." "But Captain," protested Cargo Master Thix, his scaled head emerging from the lower deck access hatch. "The consortium is expecting our delivery of medical supplies. The colonists on Kepler Station—" "We'll wait," Vexara interrupted. "Better to arrive late than to risk an encounter with humans. You've heard the stories." Everyone on the bridge had heard the stories. Humans who could survive injuries that would kill any other species 3 times over. Humans who thought recreational activities like skydiving and bungee jumping were fun rather than utterly insane. Humans whose military tactics were so brutal and efficient that they had never lost a major conflict since joining the Galactic Alliance 50 years ago. The Silent Current adjusted its course, engines humming as they prepared for the longer journey. For 3 days, they traveled without incident. The crew relaxed into their routines, confident they had made the right choice. The medical supplies in their hold were valuable, but not worth risking their lives over. On the 4th day, everything went wrong. "Captain!" Kree's voice cracked with panic. "Massive gravitational anomaly detected. It's pulling us off course." The ship lurched violently to starboard. Vexara grabbed the command rail as artificial gravity struggled to compensate. Warning lights flashed across every console as systems began failing one by one. "It's a rogue singularity!" the science officer shrieked. "A black hole that wasn't on any charts! We're caught in its accretion disk!" The Silent Current wasn't built for this kind of stress. Zalathi ships were designed for peaceful trade and exploration, not for escaping the gravitational pull of collapsed stars. The hull groaned and creaked as tidal forces began to tear at its structure. "Engines to maximum!" Vexara commanded. "All available power to thrust!" "It's not enough!" Kree's tentacles were a blur of motion. "We're still being pulled in! Hull breach on deck 7! Emergency force fields are holding, but not for long!" The ship shuddered again, and this time, the lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the bridge in an eerie red glow. The temperature began to drop as life support systems failed one by one. "Options?" Vexara asked, though she already knew the answer. "We could jettison the cargo," Thix suggested. "Reduce our mass, maybe gain enough thrust to—" A terrible screech of tearing metal cut him off. The Silent Current twisted as another section of hull gave way. They were dying, slowly but inevitably being crushed and torn apart by forces beyond their control. "Captain," the communications officer spoke quietly, "there is one option." Everyone turned to look at her. Sub-Commander Yila was young, barely out of the academy, but her 6 eyes held a grim determination. "We're still within range of human space. We could send a distress signal." The bridge fell silent except for the groaning of their dying ship. Asking humans for help was like asking a pack of predators to rescue prey. But what choice did they have? The humans are bound by Alliance law, Yila continued. They have to respond to distress calls. And their ships, she paused, gathering courage. Their ships are built to survive anything. If anyone can reach us in time, it's them. Another violent shake. More warning lights. The Singularity's pull was increasing. Vexara closed all four eyes, thinking of her mate and larvae back on Zelath Prime. She'd promised to return to them. The medical supplies in their hold could save thousands of lives on Kepler Station. Her crew trusted her to make the right decision. "Send the signal," she ordered. Yila's fingers flew across her console. The distress beacon was broad spectrum, designed to reach as far as possible. It contained their coordinates, ship identification, crew complement, and the nature of their emergency. Most importantly, it contained the universal SOS that every spacefaring species recognized. "Signal sent," Yila reported. "Now we wait." "How long until the hull collapses?" Vexara asked. "At current degradation rate, 6 hours, maybe 7. 6 hours. Even if the humans received their signal immediately, could they reach them in time? Human ships were fast, but space was vast. "Captain," Kree's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm detecting something on long-range sensors." "The humans?" "No, it's another ship. Also caught in the Singularity's pull. Oh, by the depths, it's a Kraken raider vessel." The bridge erupted in panicked voices. As if their situation wasn't bad enough, now they had Kraken to worry about. The spider-like aliens were pirates and slavers, preying on weak vessels throughout the galaxy. Even if they survived the black hole, the Kraken would tear them apart for their cargo and sell the crew to the highest bidder. "Can they reach us?" Vexara demanded. "They're in a similar predicament," Kree reported, "but their ship is more heavily built. They might last longer than us. If we both survive, they'll be waiting." The silent current continued its death spiral, each orbit bringing them closer to the point of no return. The crew worked frantically to shore up failing systems, but it was like trying to bail out an ocean with a bucket. They were engineers and traders, not miracle workers. 2 hours passed, then 3. The hull breaches spread like cracks in ice. The temperature on the bridge had dropped to near freezing. Ice crystals formed on the walls as moisture condensed and froze. "Captain," Yila's voice cut through the despair, "I'm receiving a transmission." Every head, eye stalk, and sensory appendage turned toward her. "It's in human standard. They're responding to our distress call." "Put it through," Vexara ordered, not daring to hope. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a human vessel. The human who appeared made every non-human on the Zalathi bridge instinctively recoil. Tall by most species standards, with forward-facing predator eyes, visible musculature even through their uniform, and most unsettling of all, they were smiling. Humans smiled when they were happy, but they also smiled when they were about to do something incredibly dangerous. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Relentless," the human said. "We received your distress call. Hang tight, we're on our way." "Captain Chen," Vexara managed to reply, "we're caught in a rogue Singularity's gravity well. Our hull is compromised. We have perhaps 3 hours before total structural collapse." The human's smile widened, which several crew members found deeply disturbing. "Understood, Captain. We'll be there in 2 hours and 40 minutes. Keep your ship together until then. Relentless, out." The transmission ended, leaving the Zalathi crew in stunned silence. 2 hours and 40 minutes? Kree said. "That's impossible. To reach us that quickly from the nearest human system, they'd have to be traveling at speeds that would tear most ships apart," finished the science officer. But human ships weren't like most ships. They were over-engineered monstrosities built by a species that thought safety regulations were suggestions and structural limits were challenges to overcome. While other species built their vessels to be efficient and comfortable, humans built theirs to survive anything the universe could throw at them. The next 2 hours were the longest in Vexara's life. The silent current died around them piece by piece. They lost 2 more decks to hull breaches. The Kraken Raider had stopped trying to escape and was now broadcasting threats, promising to skin them alive if they survived. With 20 minutes to spare, Kree detected something on sensors that made his chromatophores flash in confusion. "Captain, I'm reading. This can't be right." "What is it?" "I'm detecting not one human vessel, but 15. No, 20. Still counting. Captain, it's an entire human fleet." The view screen activated again, and this time, Captain Chen wasn't alone. Her bridge was full of humans, all wearing the same predatory smiles, all looking eager for what was to come. "Captain Vexara," Chen said, "slight change of plans. Turns out you're not the only ones who need help today. We brought friends." The sensor display lit up like a celebration festival as human ships poured into the system. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and even a carrier that was larger than some space stations. They came in hot, engines burning at levels that would have melted most species' ships, decelerating at rates that should have crushed their crews into paste. "How?" was all Vexara could manage. "Your distress signal was picked up by a patrol ship near the border," Chen explained. "When they realized you were caught by a rogue singularity, they put out a call to every human vessel within 3 systems. Nobody orders humans to help, Captain. We volunteer, especially when there are lives on the line." A new voice crackled over the comms, rough and aggressive. "Human vessels, this is Kraken Bloodclaw. This prey is ours. Withdraw or face." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Sorry about that," Chen said casually. "The thunderstrike just hit them with an EMP. Don't worry, we'll tow them out too. After we arrest them for piracy, of course." The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have been suicide for any other species. They positioned themselves in the Singularity's gravity well, using their overpowered engines to maintain position. Tractor beams lanced out, grabbing both the silent current and the now disabled Kraken Raider. "All vessels," a new human voice announced over fleet-wide comms. "This is Admiral Torres aboard the Indomitable. Prepare for synchronized pull on my mark. Remember, smooth and steady. These folks aren't built like us." Vexara watched in amazement as 27 human vessels, each worth more than her entire planet's merchant fleet, worked in perfect coordination to pull them free. The humans made it look easy, but she could see the strain on their engines, the way space itself seemed to ripple around their ships as they fought the black hole's pull. "Mark," Admiral Torres commanded. The universe lurched. If the silent current hadn't been held by multiple tractor beams, it would have been torn apart by the acceleration. Even so, Vexara heard hull plates scream in protest. But piece by piece, meter by meter, they were pulled away from certain death. An hour later, they were clear. The silent current hung in space, battered but alive, surrounded by enough human firepower to conquer a small system. "Captain Vexara," Admiral Torres appeared on screen. She was older than Chen, with gray in her hair and scars on her face that spoke of battles won at great cost. "Welcome back to the land of the living. Our medical teams are standing by to assist your wounded, and our engineers will help you make repairs." "Why?" Vexara asked. "We're not your allies. We actively avoid your space. Why risk so much for us?" The Admiral's expression softened. "Because 40 years ago, a Zalathi medical ship answered a human colony's distress call, saved 3,000 people from a plague. The captain's name was Rexara. Your grandmother, I believe?" Vexara's mandibles dropped open in shock. She'd heard the story, of course. Her grandmother had been terrified of humans, but had answered their call anyway. "Humans have long memories, Captain," Torres continued. "We remember our debts. Besides," and here came that unsettling smile again, "we've been meaning to deal with that Kraken clan for months. You just gave us the excuse we needed." As if on cue, the Kraken Raider powered up its weapon systems, apparently having overcome the EMP. They managed to fire exactly one shot before 12 human vessels returned fire simultaneously. The Raider's shields collapsed like tissue paper, and precision strikes disabled every weapon, engine, and life support backup they had. "Kraken vessel, this is Admiral Torres. You are under arrest for piracy, attempted murder, and being stupid enough to fire on a human fleet. Surrender, or we'll show you why everyone calls us Deathworlders." The Kraken surrendered. Over the next 6 hours, Vexara watched the humans work. They swarmed over her ship like helpful predators, welding hull breaches, replacing blown systems, and somehow making improvements along the way. The human engineers seemed personally offended by the silent current's safety margins. "Only triple redundancy on your life support?" one of them had asked, appalled. "What if the first 3 systems fail?" They installed emergency beacons, upgraded their shields, and reinforced their hull with something they called battle steel that was apparently standard on human civilian vessels. The Zalathi crew watched in mixed awe and terror as humans performed spacewalks in the residual gravity distortions of the black hole, treating conditions that would kill most species as a minor inconvenience. "Your medical supplies?" another human informed Thix. "We noticed they're time-sensitive. We've dispatched the Mercury's Dream to deliver our stockpile to Kepler Station. They'll arrive 2 days before your original scheduled delivery, no charge." When Vexara protested that they couldn't accept such generosity, Captain Chen had laughed. "Captain, do you know what humans call a situation like yours? Tuesday, this is what we do. We're the species that looks at space and all its dangers and says, 'Challenge accepted.' We're the ones who run toward danger when everyone else runs away. Not because we have to, but because someone needs help." As the human fleet prepared to depart, leaving the silent current repaired and the Kraken in custody, Admiral Torres sent one final message. "Captain Vexara, you asked why we came. The simple answer? You called for help. That's all the reason humans need. Safe travels, and remember, you're under human protection now. Anyone who bothers you answers to us." The fleet jumped to hyperspace in perfect formation, leaving behind only glittering ion trails and a very confused Zalathi crew. The news of the Zalathi rescue spread through the Galactic Alliance communication networks faster than light itself. Every species had their own version of the story, each more incredible than the last. The Etherians, beings of pure energy, buzzed with excitement about the humans' reckless bravery. The silicon-based crystallides calculated and recalculated the odds of survival, their conclusions always the same: impossible without the humans. On the trading station Nexus Point 7, merchants, travelers, and diplomats from 100 different worlds gathered around viewing screens, watching the footage that the human fleet had transmitted. The sight of 27 warships pulling 2 vessels out of a black hole's grip was something none of them had ever imagined possible. Ambassador Grex of the Morvaki delegation stood in the station's central plaza, his chitinous body rigid with disbelief. The Morvaki were ancient, one of the founding species of the Galactic Alliance. They had seen empires rise and fall, watched species evolve from primitive tool users to spacefaring civilizations, but humans continued to surprise them. "They sent an entire fleet," Grex muttered to his aide, "for one merchant vessel carrying medical supplies. The fuel costs alone." "The humans don't think like us, Ambassador," his aide replied. "They measure value differently." 3 systems away, on the human colony world of New Shangri-La, Captain Sarah Chen was enjoying her first real meal in days when her communicator buzzed. She recognized the caller ID and grinned. "Mom, I told you I'd call after the mission." "Sarah Marie Chen?" Her mother's voice carried the tone that all human children recognized as, "You're in trouble, but I love you." "I had to hear from the news that my daughter played tug-of-war with a black hole." "It wasn't that dangerous," Sarah protested, knowing it was futile. "We had Admiral Torres with us. Besides, you're the one who taught me to help people in need." "I taught you to help old ladies cross the street, not to fight the fundamental forces of the universe." Sarah laughed. This was humanity in a nutshell. They worried about each other constantly, while simultaneously encouraging the very behavior they worried about. It was a contradiction that aliens found baffling. Meanwhile, on Earth, the United Earth Defense Council was dealing with an unexpected consequence of the rescue. Dozens of alien governments were formally requesting human protection for their merchant fleets. The rescue of the Silent Current had demonstrated something many species had suspected, but never seen proven. Humans would risk everything to save lives, even alien ones. General Marcus Webb, a man who had fought in 3 interstellar wars and bore the scars to prove it, looked at the mountain of requests with amusement. "They avoided us for 50 years, he told the council. Called us Deathworlders, barbarians, insane. Now they want our protection?" "Can you blame them?" asked Counselor Lisa Park. "We just showed the galaxy that we'll mobilize a fleet worth more than some planet's GDP to save one ship. That kind of dedication is either terrifying or reassuring, depending on which side you're on." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent message. Another distress call, this time from deep in Kraken territory. A colony ship carrying 10,000 Felvani refugees had been captured by pirates. The Felvani were pacifists, physically incapable of violence due to their evolutionary path. They were, in human terms, sitting ducks. "How many ships can we mobilize?" Webb asked. "Sir," his aide hesitated. "The Felvani have consistently voted against human membership expansions in the Alliance. They've called us a necessary evil at best." Webb's scarred face split into a grin that would have terrified any non-human. "I didn't ask about politics, Lieutenant. I asked about ships." 43 vessels within rapid deployment range, sir." "Send them all." The aide blinked. "All of them." "Sir?" "Every single one, and broadcast it. Let the galaxy see what humans do when someone calls for help." Back on Nexus Point 7, Ambassador Grex received an encrypted message from his government. The Morvaki High Council was in emergency session, debating a proposal that would have been unthinkable just days ago, formally requesting a mutual defense treaty with humanity. "They're insane," one counselor argued through the quantum communicator. "They treat war like a sport, danger like entertainment. Their children play games that would traumatize our warriors." "And yet," another counselor interjected, "they mobilized 27 ships to save aliens who fear them. They're now sending 43 to save the Felvani who despise them. What does that tell us?" Grex knew what it told them. It told them that humans were nothing like the monsters many species had made them out to be. They were something far more complex and perhaps more frightening. They were protectors who enjoyed the fight. On the other side of the galaxy, the Kraken clan leaders were holding their own emergency meeting. The capture of one of their raider vessels by humans had sent shockwaves through their criminal empire. "They disabled every system simultaneously," reported the survivor who had been released to carry the message. 12 ships firing with surgical precision. They could have vaporized us. Instead, they arrested us. Like common criminals. "We are common criminals," growled clan leader Thrak. "But the humans treat us like naughty children rather than the terror of the spaceways." "It's insulting." "It's terrifying," corrected his lieutenant. "They're not afraid of us, at all. Do you understand what that means? Every other species fears the Kraken. Humans see us as a minor inconvenience. The human fleet reached the Felvani colony ship in record time. The pirates who had captured it were from a different clan than the one that had threatened the Zalathi, but they had heard about what happened. When 43 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect attack formation, the pirates' courage evaporated like water in vacuum. "Pirate vessels," Admiral Rebecca Stone announced, her voice carrying across all frequencies. "You have 1 minute to release the colony ship and surrender. This is your only warning." "You're bluffing," the pirate leader responded, trying to sound confident. "You humans claim to protect life. You won't risk the refugees." Admiral Stone smiled. It was the kind of smile that evolution had designed to make prey animals freeze in terror. "Want to bet?" The next 58 seconds were the longest in the pirate leader's life. Human ships moved with predatory grace, surrounding the pirates in a sphere of potential destruction. Weapons powered up with ominous hums that carried through the communication channels. Target locks appeared on every pirate vessel simultaneously. At 59 seconds, the pirates surrendered. The Felvani refugees were transferred to human medical ships, where they were treated with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the humans' fearsome reputation. Human medics, the same species that could survive injuries that would kill others 3 times over, handled the delicate Felvani with infinite care. "I don't understand," the Felvani colony leader whispered to a human nurse who was treating a minor injury. "We have opposed your species at every turn. Why save us?" The nurse, a young woman named Amy, who had grown up on a world where the temperature regularly exceeded what most species considered lethal, smiled softly. "Because you needed help. That's all the reason humans need." The footage of 43 warships saving 10,000 refugees who had politically opposed humanity spread even faster than the Zalathi rescue. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity. Species that had maintained careful neutrality toward humans began reconsidering their positions. On the Zalathi homeworld, Captain Vexara had become something of a celebrity. She used her newfound fame to speak a truth that many had begun to realize. "We called them Deathworlders because they come from a planet that tries to kill them every day. We feared them because they're strong, fast, and seemingly unkillable. But we failed to ask the important question, what kind of people does such a world create? It creates people who understand suffering and choose to prevent it. It creates people who know danger intimately and run toward it to protect others. It creates people who have stared death in the face so often that they'll laugh at it while pulling you to safety. Yes, humans are Deathworlders, but death is what they bring to your enemies, not to you." The human ambassador to the Galactic Alliance, David Chen, no relation to Captain Sarah Chen despite the shared surname that confused many aliens, stood before the assembled representatives. The council chamber, designed to accommodate beings from worlds with vastly different environmental needs, hummed with tension. "The Alliance has spent 50 years debating whether humans are too dangerous to fully integrate," he said, his voice calm but carrying. "You've restricted our expansion, limited our voting rights, and treated us like barely controlled weapons. And maybe you were right to be cautious. We are dangerous." He paused, letting that sink in. "But we're dangerous to pirates, to slavers, to those who would harm the innocent. We're dangerous to black holes that dare to swallow ships full of medical supplies. We're dangerous to anyone or anything that threatens people who need help. You call us Deathworlders like it's an insult. We call ourselves human like it's a promise. A promise that when you're in trouble, when the odds are impossible, when everyone else says it can't be done, we'll be there. Not because we have to be, but because we choose to be." The chamber erupted in discussion. The Vorthon delegates' crystalline form chimed with what passed for anxiety among their kind. But what about the stories? Humans who jump from atmospheric craft for fun, who swim with predators, who consume poisonous substances like capsaicin and ethanol. David chuckled. All true. We're a species that finds joy in challenge. We climb mountains because they're there. We dive to ocean depths that would crush most beings. We ride controlled explosions into space because walking was too slow. But that same drive that makes us seek danger for fun makes us unstoppable when someone needs saving. The Etherian ambassador pulsed thoughtfully. You're asking us to trust that your madness will always be directed appropriately. No, David replied. I'm telling you that it already is. Count the ships we've sent to rescue missions versus the ships we've sent to war. Count the lives we've saved versus the lives we've taken. Do the math that you're all so fond of. Tell me what you find. They did the math. The results were undeniable. For every military action, there were dozens of rescue operations. For every life taken in defense, hundreds had been saved. The Deathworlders had the galaxy's highest combat ratings and its highest humanitarian scores. Back in human space, children were playing a new game inspired by the recent rescues. They pretended to be starship captains, saving aliens from black holes and pirates. Their parents watched with the mixture of pride and worry that defined human parenting. Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be like Captain Chen, a 6-year-old declared, waving a toy spaceship. That's wonderful, sweetheart, her mother replied, already mentally calculating how many years she had before her daughter would want to do something impossibly dangerous to help others. On a human military base, new recruits were going through training. Their instructor, a grizzled veteran with more medals than most species had names for bravery, addressed them. Listen up. You think being human makes you special? It doesn't. What makes you special is what you choose to do with being human. We're stronger than most species, more durable, more adaptable. That's not a privilege. It's a responsibility. When that distress call comes, and it will come, you answer. Doesn't matter if it's from someone who hates us, fears us, or has never heard of us. Doesn't matter if it's dangerous, impossible, or insane. We answer because that's what humans do. The recruits absorbed this lesson, adding it to the contradictory mix of competitiveness and cooperation, aggression and protection, chaos and honor that formed the human military doctrine. Meanwhile, the Kraken clans were facing a crisis. 3 more of their raiding parties had been captured by human patrols, each time without a single casualty on either side. The humans had treated them like criminals rather than warriors, processing them through something called due process, and even providing them with legal representation. They're domesticating us, one clan leader complained, taking the fear out of piracy. How can we terrorize shipping lanes when everyone knows the humans will just arrest us and give us lawyers? The smarter clan leaders were already adapting. If humans were going to treat pirates like common criminals rather than existential threats, perhaps it was time to find a new line of work. Several clans quietly began transitioning to legitimate shipping, finding that honest trade was actually more profitable when you didn't have to worry about human fleets ruining your day. The galaxy was changing. Species that had spent centuries in fear of pirates now sailed with confidence, knowing that somewhere out there, humans were listening for distress calls. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to danger were reopening. Colony ships ventured into previously unsafe regions. And through it all, humans continued to be themselves. They still jumped out of perfectly good spacecraft for fun. They still ate foods that other species classified as chemical weapons. They still thought that wrestling with predators was a reasonable form of entertainment. But they also still answered every call for help. They still sent fleets to save single ships. They still treated the word impossible as a challenge rather than a barrier. The Galactic Alliance eventually voted on full human integration. The vote wasn't even close. Species after species stood to share their stories. The Zalathi told of being pulled from a black hole. The Felvani told of being saved despite their opposition. Even some reformed Kraken told of being treated with dignity despite their crimes. When the results were announced, human space erupted in celebration. Not because they had won recognition, but because now they could help even more effectively. No more jurisdictional limits, no more political barriers to rescue operations, no more having to wait for permission to save lives. Ambassador David Chen sent a message to all human worlds and fleets. We are now full members of the Galactic Alliance. Our responsibilities have grown, but our mission remains the same. We are the shield against the dark. We are the hand that pulls others from danger. We are the voice that answers distress calls. We are human, and we protect. Captain Sarah Chen, now commanding a task force dedicated to emergency response, received the news while investigating an unstable pulsar that threatened shipping lanes. She grinned at her mixed-species crew, which now included several Zalathi who had volunteered to serve with humans. You hear that, people? We're official now. Let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when we're trying to save lives instead of end them. Her executive officer, a Zalathi named Kree, who had been inspired by his rescue to join human service, chittered with what humans had learned was laughter. Captain, with respect, I think the galaxy already knows. They're counting on it. And they were. Across thousands of worlds, billions of beings slept a little better, knowing that somewhere in the dark between stars, humans were standing watch. The Deathworlders had become the galaxy's guardians, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple act of answering calls for help. The transformation was complete. What had begun as fear of the dangerous humans had evolved into faith in them. They were still Deathworlders, still impossibly reckless by galactic standards, still capable of violence that made other species uncomfortable. But now everyone understood the truth. Humans weren't dangerous despite coming from a death world. They were protective because of it. They had evolved on a planet that showed no mercy, so they had learned to show mercy to each other. They had survived by working together against impossible odds, so they extended that cooperation to anyone who needed it. The galaxy had called, and the Deathworlders had answered. And they would keep answering, for as long as there were those who needed help. 5 years had passed since humanity's full integration into the Galactic Alliance. The term Deathworlder had evolved from a whispered warning to a badge of honor. Human emergency response fleets patrolled the shipping lanes. Human search and rescue teams trained other species in survival techniques. Human engineers reinforced space stations with their trademark over-engineering that other species had once mocked but now desperately requested. The galaxy had found its guardians, and for 5 years there had been relative peace. Then the Devourers came. They emerged from the void between galaxies like a plague of metal and hunger. No one knew what they were. Machines left behind by some dead civilization, a species that had transcended biology. Or something worse. What everyone knew was what they did. They consumed. Planets, stations, ships. Anything with resources was broken down and absorbed into their ever-growing swarm. The first warning came from a remote monitoring station on the galactic rim. The transmission was brief and terrifying. Unknown entities detected. Thousands of them. They're eating the station. Send help. Oh God, they're... Silence. By the time the first scout ships arrived, there was nothing left but empty space and trace particles that had once been a facility housing 300 souls. The Galactic Alliance convened an emergency session. Representatives from every member species crowded into the council chamber, fear palpable in the recycled air. The Vorthan delegates' crystalline form flickered with distress frequencies. The Morvaki ambassador's chitin had gone pale. Even the energy-based Etherians seemed dimmed. They consumed an entire station in less than 6 hours, the Zalathi representative reported, her 4 eyes wide with terror. Our analysis suggests they're heading toward the core worlds at their current rate of acceleration. 3 months, finished the human representative, Admiral Torres, recently promoted to humanity's military liaison. 3 months before they reach the first inhabited systems. What can we do? The Felvani delegate's voice quivered. Our weapons barely scratch them. They adapt to our shields. They learn from every encounter. All eyes turned to the humans. Admiral Torres stood, her scarred face grim but determined. We fight. We adapt faster than they do. We hit them with everything we have and then things we haven't invented yet. But how? Demanded the Kraken representative, one of the reformed clans that had gone legitimate. Even you humans can't fight a swarm of millions. Torres smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Watch us. What followed was the largest mobilization in galactic history. Every human ship, military or civilian, was recalled and refitted. The famous human over-engineering went into overdrive. Ships designed to rescue were armed with weapons that violated 3 different treaties. Engines built to outrun black holes were pushed beyond their theoretical limits. But humans didn't just prepare their own forces. They opened their military academies to any species willing to learn. They shared technology that they'd kept classified. They taught gentle species how to fight and warrior species how to fight smarter. Captain Sarah Chen, now in command of the experimental warship Hope's Hammer, stood before a mixed-species crew that included Zalathi, Morvaki, Felvani, and even a few reformed Kraken. "I won't lie to you," she said. "What's coming is unlike anything we've faced. The Devourers don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They don't stop. But neither do we." Her Zalathi executive officer, Kree, clicked his mandibles nervously. "Captain, the odds calculators say our chances of survival are—" "Wrong," Sarah interrupted. "The odds are wrong because they don't factor in the most important variable. We're not fighting for survival. We're fighting for each other." The first engagement came 2 weeks later. A Devourer scout swarm, only a few thousand units, encountered a human patrol fleet near an abandoned mining system. What happened next was broadcast across the galaxy. The humans didn't wait for the Devourers to attack. They charged. 30 human vessels, each one modified with experimental weapons and shields, slammed into the scout swarm like a hammer into glass. Energy beams that could crack moons sliced through Devourer units. Kinetic weapons fired projectiles at percentages of light speed. And when the Devourers adapted to those weapons, the humans switched tactics. They rammed them. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as human ships, their crews singing war songs from 100 different Earth cultures, used their own vessels as weapons. For every human ship lost, hundreds of Devourers were destroyed. "They're insane," whispered a Vorthon observer. "They're human," corrected Ambassador Grex. "They've always been insane. Now they're insane with a purpose." The scout swarm was destroyed, but it had transmitted data back to the main mass. The Devourers learned, adapted, prepared for human tactics. The humans learned faster. In shipyards across human space, engineers worked around the clock. They studied the wreckage of Devourer units, reverse-engineered their technology, and then did what humans did best. They improved it. "They adapt to energy weapons?" Chief Engineer Rodriguez asked at a design meeting. "Fine. We'll hit them with everything. Energy, kinetic, biological, chemical, gravitational. We'll throw the kitchen sink at them and then build a bigger sink." The biological weapon suggestion was immediately vetoed. Humans had strict rules about that. But everything else was on the table. Weapons that fired black holes, shields that existed in multiple dimensions, engines that could slip between reality's cracks. 2 months in, the main Devourer swarm reached the first defensive line. 50,000 Alliance ships, a third of them human, waited. The battle was visible from 3 systems away. It was a massacre. The Devourers adapted to each weapon, countered each tactic, learned from each loss. The defensive line held for 6 days before breaking. 10,000 ships were lost, consumed by the ever-growing swarm. But those 6 days had bought time. Time for evacuations, time for preparation, time for humanity to do something desperate. "Operation Porcupine is ready," General Webb announced to the Emergency Council. His face was grim. He'd lost a daughter in the defensive line. "But I need to be clear about what we're proposing." He brought up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked Devourer positions. Blue marked Alliance forces. Gold marked human fleets. "We're going to turn every human ship into a weapon. Not just warships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels. Everything. We're going to pack them with the most destructive weapons we can create and send them into the swarm. Some will be crewed, some will be automated. All will be one-way trips." The chamber fell silent. Even for humans, this was extreme. "You're talking about suicide runs," the Felvani delegate said quietly. "I'm talking about buying the galaxy time," Webb corrected. "Time to evacuate. Time to prepare. Time to maybe, just maybe, find a way to stop these things permanently. And your people agree to this?" Webb gestured to his aide, who activated another display. It showed application numbers for Operation Porcupine. Over 10 million humans had volunteered for what everyone knew were one-way missions. "We had to turn people away," Webb said simply. The galaxy reeled. 10 million volunteers for certain death. It was incomprehensible to most species. But then most species hadn't evolved on a death world. Most species didn't tell their children bedtime stories about heroes who died saving others. While Operation Porcupine prepared, smaller human fleets performed miracles across the galaxy. They evacuated entire worlds, sometimes with Devourers literally consuming the evacuation ship's hull plating as they fled. They bought time with their lives, ramming Devourer units to clear paths for refugee convoys. Captain Chen's Hope's hammer became legendary for its evacuations. Using experimental jump drives that had a 50% chance of tearing the ship apart, they jumped in and out of Devourer-controlled space, each time pulling out thousands of refugees. "Captain," Kree reported during their 20th rescue run, "the jump drive is failing. One more jump might tear us apart." Sarah looked at the sensor display. 50,000 refugees on a station, Devourers closing in. "Then we'd better make it count," she said. They made the jump. The Hope's hammer materialized inside the station's docking bay, something that should have been impossible. They loaded refugees until the ship's life support screamed warnings. Then they loaded more. The jump out tore reality. The Hope's hammer existed in 3 dimensions at once for a terrifying moment. Then they were clear, refugees safe, ship holding together with little more than human stubbornness and duct tape. Operation Porcupine launched on a day that would be remembered as humanity's finest hour. 100,000 vessels, from massive battleships to tiny personal craft, formed up in the largest fleet action in galactic history. At the head was the Relentless, Admiral Torres commanding. "All ships," Torres broadcast on an open channel that reached across the galaxy. "Today we show the universe what Deathworlders really means. We're not the bringers of death. We're the ones who tell death not today. Not to these people. Not on our watch." The fleet moved forward. The Devourers, now numbering in the billions, turned to meet them. The two forces collided in an explosion of light and destruction visible from half the galaxy away. Human ships detonated like stars going nova. Each one took thousands of Devourers with them. Some ships rammed through the swarm, engines overloading, buying seconds for others. Some stood and fought, unleashing weapons that warped space itself. The crew of the merchant vessel, Lucky Strike, volunteers all, sang ancient Earth sea shanties as they piloted their cargo ship, loaded with antimatter, into the heart of a devourer cluster. Their last transmission was laughter. The battleship Thunder God fought for 6 hours after losing half its hull, its crew refusing to die until their sector was clear. The passenger liner Star of Mumbai, crewed by volunteers from Earth's Indian subcontinent, transmitted prayers in a dozen languages as they cleared a path for refugee ships with their own destruction. For 18 hours, humanity threw itself against the devourers. For 18 hours, the galaxy watched beings they had once feared as primitive warriors display courage that transcended species, that redefined what it meant to be sapient. Then, when it seemed that even humanity's sacrifice wouldn't be enough, the unexpected happened. The Kraken clans, the former pirates who had terrorized space for generations, joined the battle. Not the reformed clans already fighting alongside the Alliance, but the holdouts, the ones who still flew the black flag. "This is Clan Leader Vex," came the transmission. "The humans are dying for people who aren't even their species. We've spent centuries taking. Time we gave something back." 40,000 pirate vessels, armed with weapons that violated every treaty ever written, slammed into the devourer flank. They fought with the fury of beings who had found something worth dying for. The Morvaki sent their ancient war fleets, ships that had been museums for 1,000 years, crewed by volunteers who sang battle hymns not heard since their species was young. The Zalathi, peaceful traders, turned their merchant vessels into ram ships, their captains broadcasting poetry as they died. The Felvani, pacifists to their core, found a loophole in their philosophy. They couldn't commit violence, but they could put themselves between the violent and the innocent. Felvani ships formed living shields, buying time with their lives. Even the Etherians, beings of pure energy who had thought themselves above physical concerns, joined the fight. They overloaded themselves, burning out their existence to disable devourer units. The battle turned, not because of superior firepower or brilliant tactics, but because every species in the galaxy had learned something from humanity. Sometimes you fight not because you can win, but because it's right. In the chaos of battle, a young human scientist named Dr. Amy Chen, no relation to Captain Sarah Chen, humans insisted, though the galaxy remained confused by human naming conventions, made a discovery. The Devourers weren't just machines. They were a collective consciousness, a hive mind that had consumed its creators and now existed only to grow. "But every network has a signal," she told the Emergency Council via quantum communication, "and every signal can be disrupted." She had a plan. It was insane, even by human standards. It required flying a ship directly into the center of the Devourer mass to what she believed was their processing core. The ship would need to survive long enough to deploy a virus, not biological, but informational, a paradox that would cause the hive mind to question its own existence. "It's a one-way trip," she explained unnecessarily. "I'll do it," said Captain Chen immediately. "No," Admiral Torres interrupted. "You've done enough, Sarah. This is my run." In the end, they didn't get to choose. The Devourer swarm, perhaps sensing the threat, shifted. The path to their core opened for just a moment, and the closest ship was a battered Zalathi merchant vessel, the Silent Current, the same ship that had started humanity's reputation as saviors. Captain Vexara, 5 years older and 5 years braver, didn't hesitate. "Dr. Chen, transmit your virus. All ships cover us. We're going in." The Silent Current, reinforced with human battle steel and crewed by volunteers from a dozen species, dove into the heart of darkness. Every ship in range turned to protect them. Humans, Kraken, Morvaki, everyone fought with desperate fury to buy seconds. The Silent Current reached the core. In her final transmission, Captain Vexara spoke to the galaxy. 5 years ago, humans saved my ship from a black hole. They asked for nothing in return. Today, I return the favor. Not because I owe a debt, but because they taught us all something. We're stronger together. This is Vexara of the Silent Current. It's been an honor. The virus deployed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Devourers stopped. Across the entire swarm, billions of units froze. The hive mind, confronted with a paradox it couldn't resolve. What purpose does consumption serve when there is nothing left to consume? Turned inward. The Devourers began consuming each other. The battle was over in minutes. The unstoppable swarm destroyed itself, each unit trying to fulfill its directive by consuming its neighbors. When the last Devourer ate the second to last, it simply shut down, its purpose fulfilled and meaningless. The galaxy had survived, but at a cost that would be felt for generations. Over 1 million ships lost, entire fleets erased, heroes beyond counting. In the aftermath, as rescue ships combed the battlefield for survivors, something remarkable happened. They found the Silent Current, battered beyond recognition but intact. The virus deployment had created a null field that the Devourers couldn't enter. Captain Vexara and her crew had survived. When asked later how it felt to be the hero of the galaxy, Vexara had laughed, a sound she'd learned from humans. "I'm not the hero. The heroes are the ones who didn't come back, human and otherwise. They showed us that being strong isn't about being unkillable. It's about choosing what you're willing to die for." The memorial service was held on Earth, humanity's death world that no longer seemed so frightening to the rest of the galaxy. Representatives from every species stood in the rain. Water falling from the sky still amazed many of them as they honored the fallen. General Webb, his hair now completely gray, spoke for humanity. "They called us Deathworlders, and they were right. We come from a world that tries to kill us every day. We evolved surrounded by death. But that's not what defines us. What defines us is that we chose to master death, not to deal it out, but to hold it back, to stand between death and those who need protection. Today, we don't just mourn humans. We mourn Zalathi traders who became warriors, Kraken pirates who became heroes, Morvaki ancients who remembered their youth. Every species that stood and fought. They're all Deathworlders now. They've earned the title." The galaxy rebuilt. Treaties were rewritten. The artificial barriers between species crumbled. Human technology was shared freely. Other species' wisdom was embraced eagerly. What emerged was not a galaxy of separate species occasionally cooperating, but a true galactic civilization. Pirates still existed, but they found slim pickings in a galaxy where every merchant ship had human-designed shields, and everyone knew the emergency frequencies. Black holes still swallowed the unwary, but human-led rescue fleets patrolled the dangerous regions. New threats would emerge. The universe was too vast and strange for peace to last forever. But when they did, they would find a galaxy that had learned humanity's greatest lesson. Together, we are mighty. Captain Sarah Chen, promoted to Commodore and given command of the new Multi-Species Emergency Response Division, stood on the bridge of her new flagship. Her crew included representatives from every spacefaring species, all volunteers, all trained in the human art of running toward danger. "Commodore," her tactical officer reported, "we're receiving a distress signal. Colony ship caught in an asteroid field requesting immediate assistance." Sarah smiled. Not the terrifying battle smile that had scared aliens for years, but the warm smile of someone about to do what they were born to do. "Set course. Maximum speed." "Sir, the asteroid field is highly unstable. Chances of successful navigation are better with us than without us. That's all that matters." As the ship jumped to hyperspace, racing toward another impossible rescue, Sarah thought about how far they'd all come. Humans were still Deathworlders. They still came from a planet that tried to kill them. They still thought jumping out of aircraft was fun, and that capsaicin was a seasoning rather than a chemical weapon, But now the galaxy understood what that really meant. It meant that when death came calling, humanity would answer the door and politely but firmly tell it to go away. And they wouldn't do it alone. The galaxy had learned from humanity, but humanity had learned too. They'd learned that courage was contagious, that heroism could be taught, that even the gentlest species could find strength when fighting for others. The distress calls would keep coming. Pirates, black holes, cosmic disasters, and threats not yet imagined would continue to menace the innocent. And every time, someone would answer. Human or otherwise, they would answer. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They master death not to deal it out, but to deny it its victims. The legend of the Deathworlders would be told for millennia, not as a warning, but as a promise. When you're in trouble, when hope is lost, when death seems certain, send the call. The Deathworlders will come.